Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So, a few weeks ago, MIT hosted a phenomenal business conference, Forging the Business with AI. So they had speakers from Hugging Face to Meta to Microsoft, and so they really put on the show here. So, throughout this video, what you'll be tuning into is just me listening in and also kind of adding some of my input to one of the panels and so too as well. So tune in, get ready, here we go.
Let me start with my introduction and then we go down the line. I'm Azita Arvani. I'm the former CEO of Rakuten Symphony North America, where we disrupted the telecom market by creating the very first mobile network that was cloud native and had full automation and also used open architecture. And now we're starting to use a lot more of AI in our automation, and we've talked to a lot of startups that did that as well. I'm also on the board of two public companies. One is using robotics in doing autonomous industrial cleaning machines, and another one that does augmented reality, that when you combine AI with AR, you get to a lot of interesting use cases. On this panel, I have these amazing CEOs and chief AI officers for these companies. So, Shashank, why don't we start with you? You're the CEO of Deskera. You've done this for almost 16 years now. So tell us about yourselves and Deskera.
We are the youngest ERP company. I make ERPs. ERPs are the building blocks of the blueprint for a small company or medium-sized companies. I've sold to about 100,000 businesses in Asia, India, and now in US. And I keep saying ERP is the most obvious use case of any intelligent system like AI for small or medium-sized businesses, because large companies use giant systems like SAP and Oracle, but medium-sized companies which generate a lot of jobs, like 80% of all the jobs and 70% of GDP comes from medium-sized and small companies, and they don't have systems, and they take a lot of resources, money, people to get their systems right. So AI use case is perfect for those companies. I've been working with those companies for the last 15 years, and last few years, AI has been our mainstay. Again, we'll qualify AI. Igor has a very good perspective in AI, and I'm a fan of his. He'll qualify what AI means, and there's a lot of snake oil in this, vocabulary. So we'll qualify that. But what I'm trying to say is that if we can help small and medium-sized businesses, and and I'm not saying we don't help large companies. They can help themselves. But if small companies can use automated systems, this can really help our economy. Because they have 80% of jobs, so this can help in the bottom of the pyramid, and that's what I do.
Great.
Over to Igor.
Thank you so much. And Igor, I know you've gone back and forth between
Igor's amazing.
startups and big companies. You were with IBM before, and I know your sister's first name, Alexa. So tell us about that.
All right, so over 2 decades ago, I was leading the multimodal research team at IBM, where we discovered the baby version of Watson, and they didn't want to greenlight it. It was just way ahead of its time. So like Cartman from South Park, I said, screw you guys, I'm going home. And I picked off some of our top engineers and scientists, stood up our last company. If you've ever seen HBO's comedy, Silicon Valley, they lampooned a conference called TechCrunch Disrupt. Well, I went on stage at the very first one. I popped a Razr flip phone out of my pocket. I spoke into it, and crickets. Nobody knew what the heck they were seeing. What they didn't know at the time is we were secretly working with Apple on Siri before the iPhone even existed. That's how early they were thinking about these natural user interfaces, to their credit. And then 5 years later, we were acquired on the download by Amazon to birth what everybody knows as Alexa. The code name for it was Pryon, and that's why we ended up reusing it for this company. So yes, everybody in the audience can blame me. It's my fault you started having to pay sales tax on your Amazon.com orders, because they now had a nexus in Kendall Square.
Great, thanks.
Side note, Watson, they were probably one of the earliest tools that I had the opportunity to see that use some amazing analysis for like things they were doing. So they had this. They had this. It was like a Twitter personality analysis. Anything. So it's like a Twitter personality analysis. And you basically give them like import like a Twitter URL, and it'll be like this whole analysis, like personality analysis of the said person, and so it would give you things like they like, kind of like their communication style, just really insights into that person. And it was amazing because if you was going into like a VC meeting, or if you was having a meeting with a potential like job, hiring manager, like whatever it be, you can use this tool to kind of like, gain some insights and stuff on this person or anything. And of course, there's like, pros and cons of doing such or anything, but it was amazing. And then out of nowhere, they shut it down a couple years ago. So it's interesting to kind of see they was kind of repeating some said things like years ago or over a decade ago.
Thanks, Igor. Next, we're going to Stefano. Stefano, you're the chief of AI R&D. How is that different from chief of AI without the R&D part?
Well, it's research and development, so researching into it and doing it. It's probably the same. At Seekr, we make AI that can be trusted, it's explainable, and it's transparent. And we want to enable others to do so as well.
And then what does Seekr do?
Yes, like I said, we have AI-driven products that across different dimensions. We evaluate content of different modalities. Think of text, images, audio, and we score it, qualify it across different dimensions: reliability, bias, toxicity, hate speech, profanity, and our users, customers, our advertisers, campaign analysts, the regular user that really want to discover what is behind content and how reliable and truthful it is.
So we can call it like the karma of content, with the credit score that you assign to various pieces of content. Right?
You can think of it like that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So, there's a lot of AI developments in the recent, every day you get up, there's something new going on, right? How has these advancements affected the landscape for the enterprise? From the perspective of your customers, how are they looking at these AI advancements?
So I'll take the liberty of defining not just enterprise, but also small business needs, small and medium size. And I said, like 80% of our economy is around small and medium size, and that's where we play. And even in enterprise, because this is basically a superset of all the needs, AI has limitations. It can't do math. We all know that. It can't do math. So, you write an algo where it tries to create a program to do math. Whenever you ask it to do, a complex calculation, it'll basically, churn out a program to do math in real time. That's what it does. If I told you that there was a chance that the answer that I give you in a business setting is going to be wrong, I'll be fired. So if there's a 1% chance that my boss, I don't have a boss, but let's say I had a boss. If I ask a question and somebody says, look, I say, what's my sales? And they say, it's $100 billion. And I know it's not $100 billion because if it was, then I would be alone sitting here alone with you guys. But it would be wrong, so they would be fired, and that's what AI does. There's a chance that it'll be wrong, the answer will be wrong, so you have to check every output. And there are ways to do that. Arvind was here in the morning. His system works on RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. It checks for answers, checks if your answer is correct or not. The point being, AI, there's a chance it is going to be wrong in the answer it gives you, which means it doesn't work in a business setting. So then you need to quantify what it'll do and what it can do. Now, what it can do is have a conversation with you, which is what we see in ChatGPT. In the case of a business user, or enterprise, 70% of, how many of you know that 70% of small businesses and medium-sized businesses don't use software except QuickBooks? And that's a big challenge. And you've heard of SAP and Oracle and ERP companies, but they haven't been able to penetrate even 5% of that market. It's because small businesses don't trust software. And look, what are we talking about, right? If AI cannot be trusted, they're not going to trust, whatever you sell them. So they don't trust QuickBooks. They don't even trust the data that comes out of QuickBooks because they feel that the numbers that they see in those reports doesn't represent their business. And anyone who runs a small business knows that they have they have a view of the business that is not seen in the numbers. And AI can't solve that. But it can have a conversation. It can do onboarding. It can do a lot of other things. And I have a Twitter account, which I spend a lot of time writing about what it can do. But these are the limitations. And I leave it for the rest. But I think we have to have this a reset of expectations on AI as far as it concerns about enterprise and small businesses. It can't do everything. It can do a very small amount of things.
Yeah, I would agree. I think right now we're at a place where I would call it like the bottom of the first. We're at a place right now where we're all just trying to figure out, how to embed, integrate, build on top of and everything with set large language models, different AI components stuff and how we can integrate it. And so when it comes to the small business, and really kind of like even like the individual up to the enterprise, yes, the concern is mostly, I would argue, is around, not concern, the opportunities around education. And I think right now, the biggest component right now is education and teaching and coaching and building, how these things can actually be integrated, into our operations, business policies, and even help us, with set tasks, and potentially even like roles and stuff eventually. And right now, it's just a huge gap. I think we see so many, there's so much information, online. There's so much, there's even some, and there's some lack of information, along with, some, misinformation. And I think that kind of happens in every segment, no matter what topic and stuff you're alluding to. And so, building towards a enterprise, small business centric, world is going to be pivotal. Just because, like he mentioned, it's going to be necessary for us to advance and stuff, in our society. So, for example, some use cases you can think of is we've all started a job and we're trying to figure out, what's the pay schedule? Okay, who do I go to about, my, W-9s? Okay, who would I email about this? Who do I got to talk to about this? And some of those things may be outlined and stuff already for sure, but for the most part and everything, we're always trying to like figure those things out. So building a RAG application, so what he alluded to, that can help us, answer some of those questions would be amazing. So with the RAG applications, there is a lot of building an opportunity with such applications. So RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Is basically you're giving a large language model a consortium of data. It is supposed to be supposed to be like your data. So think about anything from like PDFs to TXT files. But now even Google Drive can be a source. Think about Notion can be a source, and basically your LLM is querying from that information. After using it as a database, querying for the information and kind of, giving you a response and stuff from there. And so, it can do a lot and stuff with that. So that can be a use case, where it can, help you kind of be like a onboarder and stuff, if you will. And so, I mean, they're right there. And an onboarder, but also to a training advisor, So now, of course, like these scales of application, gets more difficult as you go along and stuff. That's fine. But when it comes to helping people do their job better and help people get answers faster and everything, and helping people, figure out, problems quicker, this can be very, very, beneficial to, the broader, economy, because now you're looking at people, being more sufficient and stuff at work and everything, feeling more confident stuff at work, being able to figure out their problems and stuff, work, then obviously kind of like equates to a dollar stuff and everything in most business and regions and everything. And so, definitely can be interesting. Let's continue.
Actually, it's interesting. I did a search on one of the companies I'm on the board of, and it said that the revenues was not a search engine. It said that the revenues are 1.6 billion, and I knew that's a little higher. It was actually 1.2 billion, and I checked. So you're right. You always,
billion.
it's 1.2 billion, yeah. But it was saying it's 1.6 billion, which is, it was a nice thing. And I said, oh, I don't even know the revenues of the company I'm on the board of. That's strange. That's why I checked. Anyways, the point being that you obviously have to check these numbers as they come out. Igor, what do you think? How should the enterprises think about, they hear all these things, they get excited, and they come to you and say, hey, give me the latest Gen AI. I want to, take that and brush it all over my enterprise.
Yeah, it's actually worse than that. Pre-pandemic, I remember giving a talk at the Chief Digital Officers Forum, and they said, hey, what's one thing that you're going to now tell us? It's very important that we should know. I'm like, here's what's going to happen. You're going to waste my time for 1 year because it's going to be build versus buy. You're all euphoric, the picks.
Guys, all right, I'm sorry. First of all, I love Igor. Everything. I agree with everything he's going to say about this. This is so reassuring to me. I did, if you guys know anything, I did some workshops. I've been doing workshops now for the past, I don't know, year or so. And this is one of the things I was teaching about throughout these workshops. So I did a multi-series workshop with the impact of AI in government. Was it government, education, food industry? Oh, and entrepreneurs. It was actually government / nonprofits. And one of the things I kept saying, were for companies throughout this process is like, you have to think about the buy versus build method, into this. And so are you going to buy? You're going to build it. Every situation, every business, every focus is going to have a different use case. But it's just reassuring to hear, him say this.
Picks and shovel crowd are knocking on your doorstep. It's going to be build versus buy. You're all euphoric. The picks and shovel crowd are knocking on your doorsteps, and your IT teams are going to try to figure this out. And then I have to channel my inner Japanese soul to figure out how you don't lose face. I can't let them use face, so I have to do all this theater for the better part of a year before you realize there's no way you can build what we've been building for 20, 30, 40 years. So that's the first thing that we typically encounter with these enterprises is the stages of grief until they finally realize it. The other thing is, I adore that he's starting on SMBs and bringing in capabilities that would otherwise be unyielding to them, like the SAPs and the rest of them that they would never hope to touch. I did what my COO calls SaaS backwards. When he encountered me, he's one of the original Oracle execs that Benioff brought in to help him run go-to-markets from year 2 through IPO, and he kind of was laughing his head off. He's like, you're going after the biggest, baddest organizations on planet Earth, the largest government agencies and things like that. Why are you doing that instead of going SMB? And I'm like, here's why. If you want your kid to be an Olympian, you hang out with Olympians and you get trained by them. And if we go and we can service and install things in nuclear reactor sites and government agencies and things of that sort, then I know everything is down market and the team gets that experience in a lot more aggressive way. So over a half decade ago, we said, hey, there's an intersection of AI and knowledge management that doesn't exist. Look, we're all going to these conferences and all the big tech folks are showing up. Hey, look at all this stuff that I now have for enterprise and AI and stuff like that. 2017 is when we started. Who was talking about enterprise AI then? Nobody. Who was talking about having conversational interfaces on these systems? Nobody. You know why? Because every time I said, hey, this is what it's going to be like, everybody was saying, no, the interfaces are going to be more Tableau-like, more Looker-like, all selectors and things of that sort. That's how enterprises wanted to use that stuff. And I'm like, that's peculiar because all of us know how to talk to each other before we learn how to read and write as well. So I'd rather focus on putting the human at the center of these experiences, and then everything will work itself out in the wash. And then what happens with ChatGPT 24 months ago? That gets revealed, 100 million people start using that, and then everybody starts parroting the same thing, and I get to roll my eyes.
I love Igor. All right, again, reassuring. Human in the loop is what he's alluding to. We're not at a place right now with most tools, things that we can build on the generative AI side and everything to kind of like allow it to kind of fully automate itself, especially if you're building a RAG application. So, I mean, it's very I'm not gonna say easy, but you can get a RAG application to be 80% correct and everything. Very probably, I'll say I hate to use the word easy, but easy and everything. So after that, you're fighting for every 1% and everything to kind of get it marginally increasing, more efficient stuff as you go and stuff along. And so, I love Igor because having a human in the loop and everything is still imperative and everything for this time period of stuff that we're in. I mean, maybe that changes in 3 months, 5 years and stuff. Who knows and stuff. So we'll see. Let's continue.
Stefanos, can you talk about how enterprises are seeing the advancement of AI, but in particular, maybe touch upon the fact that since you come from the sort of the R&D side of this, the technology has democratized across, whether you're large or small, you can use AI, for your customer service, whether you're a $1 million company or a $1 billion company. How do you respond to that and what we heard from Shashank and Igor?
Yeah, so I think democratization is one way of seeing it. There is open source AI, but there's also, I think the vast majority of companies are not using open source AI, they're using closed source AI. And the big challenge with really open source AI is computing costs. It's in order to make AI, in order to build AI and maintain AI, you need computers, you need power, and there's going to be that, and that's expensive, right? There's going to be a correction, I think, where things are going, and there's going to be some kind of change in the status quo of the hardware providers with more competitive AI accelerators and chips that are coming out. But yeah, generally, I think democratization is an interesting way of putting it, because there's only still a very few that can operate open source due to the prohibitive costs.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging to it's okay. So it's challenging to work in the field of open source and everything by itself already and everything. It becomes even more challenging where you're trying to build your own model and everything from scratch and everything, or even on top of an open source technology model stuff, where it may be, and then from there maintaining those things. And now with, like, for example, like with Llama 3, I mean, they've showed us a new world of overtraining and the ability and what they look like, the benefits of doing such, but all that you still need compute, to do so. And so it's the access to computer is definitely one of those things that I think a lot of companies are trying to figure out, everything from NVIDIAs to the, to your IBMs and such. And, I'm pretty sure there's other companies who's trying to get into the space. I know Facebook has talked about it, everything. And also along with OpenAI when it comes to that. And so, I mean, we'll see. I think, I'm not sure the solution around like the compute component. I know there's a lot of companies trying to figure this out, and I think it's also like a gold rush too as well. And so, but I think it's one of the beautiful problems of our days, and so we'll see.
Great, thank you, Igor. Which specific strategies, since we have a lot of people here that really want to take the ideas and put it into action, right? So what specific strategies, what lessons learned do you have from your work at Pryon that has worked for you in the enterprise to grow your revenues?
Follow the pain. You only go to the doctor when something hurts, right? Ooh, I have a owie, right? And then you go get it handled. And I'll give you a specific example of a piece of pain, all right? So here's a big energy company. And for years, they've been pouring millions of dollars to construct an AI for their outage and maintenance services. Now, why do they care about that? Because they predicted if they had such a thing, they could reduce the downtime of nuclear power plants by half. if they had such a thing, meaning they don't have to spin up fossil fuel burning plants. It makes the grid more resilient, especially in deep summer and deep winter. Now, there's a dark side to what I just said. If you ever watched any documentaries on 3 Mile Island, when Congress did an investigation, we were only within 30 minutes of a Chernobyl-like event that would have irradiated the eastern seaboard. And here's what they found. 6 major issues, and I'm oversimplifying. 1 was a design flaw, 1 was a faulty valve. 4 out of 6 issues were knowledge management issues, where engineers and technicians were not rapidly getting the pieces of information that they had. So for years, they've been trying to figure that out. We had them in production for the spring refit cycle of the reactor plants in less than 5 business days. So those are some of the outcomes. So frankly speaking, you're going to have to build the rapport and relationships and trusted to become a trusted advisor to these organizations and essentially follow that pain. I know it seems very simple, but it's amazing how many of us think that we show up and we know their use cases in terms of, hey, this must be your sales enablement pain. Hey, this must be your technical pain and things of that sort. And then we're not actually sitting there keeping our mouth shut and actually listening to them and following that pain ourselves.
So, oh man, this is so great. Knowledge management. I mean, this is kind of going back to what I just mentioned too about using, a RAG model to be your, employee onboarder, or even like your trainer. I mean, that is, very similar, idea to as well. And so, I think it's interesting because a lot of businesses can benefit from this. I see definitely a world, especially as we're advancing to the multi-model component, is I definitely see a world, and I will give credit to Google on this. If you guys remember the Google Glass that came out years ago, I mean, it's well ahead of its time. But they switched to an enterprise use case and everything using Google Glass, and so with Google Glass, it was like in construction, and so where you can see, different things of like, okay, the screw is here, the valve is here, and making sure that you're, working in the same and correct, thing. And I see a world where we'll be able to do that in multiple, such businesses. So think about a customer service agent that has a AI agent running, on their screen that is helping them write emails, answer emails, and everything. Now you just kind of got a task from your manager to saying like, hey, there's a fire stuff over here. Your AI agent has already created a draft to whatever to help, mitigate that fire. And all of those things will be the foundation of a knowledge management system where it can be anything from core values to sales data to past or prior emails to reporting docs, everything. And then you're just simply building and acting aside, with an agent or multiple agents. So, the knowledge management system, along with the building of agents and, when it comes to also to build on top of that with multi-modal components is going to be endless.
How do you get to the point where they trust you? Like from the moment you go to an enterprise, how do you make them trust you enough to give you enough people for you to see how that pain point then goes down the line and creates this massive cost that you could potentially reduce? Right?
Because I tell them, I understand you're a serious environment that's highly regulated and there's certain controls that are necessary. So my team may not even be ready with all the things that you need. And so you're not allowed to become a client of ours. And so we start this journey years ago with them to start building a rapport and relationship. And I start saying, though, hey, I don't want you to be a client, but let's
Igor is amazing.
Have our R&D team starting to work together. Think of us as a trusted advisor on the outside. Start bringing us into the environment where we can start working together. That insurgent style relationship building actually works because then we become deeply embedded in the organization. Look, whenever you're servicing these entities, you're not Johnny on the spot. You're not always there. So somehow, when you leave and your competitors show up, they have to become Teflon coated, and they know that you've put in that sacrifice, you've worked with them, you solved their problem, and your product management teams keep absorbing these requirements, because at a certain point in time, the two entities are going to meet and say, yes, you now have, let's say in DoD, the impact level 5 and 6 that you need for classified information. You now have some of the HIPAA stuff or PCI stuff that you actually need to operate in their environments. But you don't just show up on the first day that you have those certifications.
And you
I
say,
probably
have
was
an
there
AI
years
thing.
ago. Yeah,
right.
I was probably there
makes,
years ago.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yes, and yes. I have the privilege of doing this right now. I am courting, vetting, clients. I've started relationships with potential clients 8 months ago, and talking to them, coaching, and now we're just now getting to the business. The building aspect of this, and helping them build out tools, for their internal use cases. And one of these are probably going to take 8 months, and another one may take 3 years. But this is, I think that this is the part of the process, and it's rewarding, to a lot of dynamics. It can be challenging, because as a builder, as an entrepreneur, as an engineer, I'm ready to get started. Like, hey, let's fail forward, let's build, let's figure this out. But again, I go back to forgetting that everybody's trying to figure this out, and I have the unique skill set to be able to teach, showcase, and then build. So I can teach you what needs to be. I can get you to I've always told you, my goal is to decrease fear, increase creativity. And so the more you increase creativity, the more I get to, work in my, my lane, my field. And so if your fear decreases, your creativity goes. Now your mind is starting to like, oh, we can do this. Okay, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can integrate this. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. Or like, hey, let's hold off on this. Let's focus, whatever it may be. And, this is kind of, where we are and stuff now as an organization. And we're, we're building these things and stuff in, real time. So it's exciting.
Stefanos, how do you see, what kind of lessons have you learned at Seekr? What works, what doesn't work, working with the enterprises?
What works and doesn't work? Yeah, I think that one big lesson learned is doing the cost-benefit analysis of, what model you're going to use for which application, really understanding your application, and doing the cost-benefit analysis of where you're going to apply this model, what hardware you're going to use, can go a long way. Large language models are not a panacea, right? They're not going to solve every problem that you may have on your business or your use case, and they're also very expensive to operate. And even if, like I said earlier, like even if you don't operate your own kind of large language models and use a closed source one, you have the issue of trust and control. You can control it, you can trust it, you can change it, you can understand it. So I think really lessons learned is understand the problem, do the cost-benefit analysis, choose the right solution for the problem, and focus on your ROI.
Man, I learned it the hard way. I understood the problem, and then I jumped straight to the solution without doing the cost analysis. I'm still feeling that one hurt. Anyway.
Stefanos, while we're at, you've got the microphone, we could also talk about what is the biggest challenge that you see with companies deploying Gen AI? It's kind of flows from what you were just talking about. If they decide to do Gen AI, what are the problems that they would encounter?
Challenge again, it goes back to cost. It's very expensive to build it, make it, build it, deploy it. That's why you have to be smart and always do the cost-benefit analysis of what is the right solution for your problem. And again, the other challenge is trust and control. Yes, closed source is a little bit less expensive, but you can trust it and you can control it.
I'll put. So I agree with his answer. I'll put his answer second. The first thing, the biggest hurdle of integrating Gen AI into businesses, small businesses, and even enterprise level is education. It is. One of them said early is, well, actually he said it, is that it's not going to solve every problem. It's not going to, it's not going to alleviate all your problems. I'll put his answer second, maybe third. So education is the first one. I think the second, maybe third. I'm still thinking through this, but I would say that somewhere around there is data. And I'm very, because this is changing in real time. So for example, yes, to build and to build, to build, certain use cases and everything, you definitely need, an amount of data. The reason I'm kind of hesitant around this because 24 months ago, it was a no to use synthetic data, stuff in this field, and now it is definitely being warmed up and is definitely being received. And so if you're able to build out synthetic data for set use cases and everything, and then train a model with the synthetic data to get a certain output, I mean, now you're off to the races, and creating synthetic data is very cheap. And so to do so, it's very cheap. And now you can train a model, or if you're doing kind of, let's call it low engineering, low code solutions. Now you can even do like, few shop prompting and stuff with this as well to, kind of get set, outcomes and use cases. I mean, now you're off to the races, and they kind of depend on also what you're building. So I like it. I definitely agree with his answer. I'm not sure if I put it second or third, but I would say definitely the first thing is education. Second or third is the like what data stuff do you have, and what you're doing, and then he's absolutely right. Cost analysis.
Okay, thank you. Shashank, anything in terms of the biggest challenge that you see with them deploying Gen AI solutions?
Yeah, so the one thing that we have seen work is AI agents, and I want to speak about AI agents. Let's say you are a small company and you had few employees, and you want to model a business where if you had more employees, what would you do with them? And every small and medium-sized business has this hard bottleneck where they can't hire more people, so they don't think beyond that. But with agents, let's say you can deploy agents, and we have agents which run on a very tight guardrail of ERP. So you have an agent that can do accounting, you have an agent that can do purchase, agent that can buy, manufacture, and so on. So you can then simulate your business. So let's say you simulate your business on Gen AI, and you say, look, I have 50 employees, and how does it look like? How would it look like if I grow at this pace for the next 3 years, and if I invest this much from my business from taking a loan or raising a financing? AI agents can do a very good job at simulating your business, and I think that's what we have seen. First of all, it's very, very less harmful than operating your business, so it's just simulating it. But B, it gives you ideas that would not necessarily come from your operations. And there's something more that I'm writing a paper on generative agents, which are sort of, there's something called as GAN, adversarial agents, adversarial networks, sorry. So I'm writing a paper on adversarial agents. So let's say you have two agents. You have, two employees, and their goal is to, achieve some they have individual goals, but they're adversarial goals. And you're just simulating those goals. You have a manager, you're an employee. You have a manager and 2 employees and 5 employees, and you're then seeing process improvements. You're asking questions that you would not necessarily see answers to in your regular operations. For example, if you have 3 or 4 offices and you buy stuff from overseas, you sell in the US, and you have you want to see what's your labor cost going to look like for the next 12 months, you can actually run a very good simulation on agents. And that's what we've seen small, even medium-sized companies with 50 employees or 100 employees use, and then get more ideas on process improvements. The second thing is that the process boundaries are going to dissolve. So an accountant can also do purchase. A marketing person, why can't a marketing person do better operations? So in traditional companies, medium-sized, small enterprise, doesn't matter. Traditional companies like manufacturing, industrial companies, they have been stuck, with their business process for like tens of years, even hundreds of years in some cases, like industrial age, right? They have been doing the same thing over and over again for hundreds of years. And the reason they can't change that is because the risk of changing that in the real world is very high. I mean, you can't raise capital as easy as, a West Coast entrepreneurs can. We have raised a lot of capital, so I know, how a small company struggles with raising capital. So if you can't raise capital, you don't have use cases. You can't experiment, you can't take a risk. If you can't take a risk, then you don't have success that can then define the next, generation of companies or the next generation of business processes. So Gen AI can help you simulate a lot of use cases in environments which were hitherto untouched, and that's the most exciting thing. So you will probably have. I mean, people will talk about jobs going away and people getting lesser jobs. I don't believe in that. I think AI is a good tool for humans to use, just like a calculator is. As I said, it has limitations, but it can be useful. And I see agents. I see very helpful co-pilots that can enhance a small business. And then again, I keep saying that enterprise, large companies can use AI or not use AI. They are still going to be grow at the same rate. But if small companies can grow even 5% faster than they are growing at, our economy will grow 5% faster. It's a very straight mathematical calculation.
Thanks, Shashank.
So he's right. If you check out OpenAI Cookbook, they have OpenAI does basically a batch of like different examples and building use cases of what you can use with their tools. And so if you look at their cookbook, they have some examples around everything from multi-model to GPT-4o and stuff now. So one of the examples that they gave is how to create an I'm trying to pull it up. My computer's freaking out. But it was how to create a multi-model customer service agent that views packages. If the packages are damaged, it can notice if it's damaged, if it's wet, if it's open. It can automatically process things like refunds, or it can, shoot it over to like a manager to, have them go check out the package, like what it may be. And so, imagine like a small business part sales service and everything that has something like this, into like their business process or operations, and they can definitely be useful. And also too, I mean, this also gives ability. I mean, we already know somebody like Amazon is going to integrate, these type of things, but this gives the small business the ability to even kind of become 10%, 15% faster or more efficient than they were the past couple of years, decades, whatever it may be. And so I mean, this puts them back in business. So I agree. I mean, definitely check out the OpenAI cookbook. I mean, I may do a video on just kind of like going through a lot of the examples and use cases and kind of building some things on top of that. So let me know in the comments if you guys want to see that.
Shashank. Igor, if you look at how rapidly the AI landscape is moving, as a startup company, a very successful startup company, but still a startup company, how do you make sure that you have an enduring business value, that your business model and your competitive advantage, stays relevant, and that you're not getting competed out by the new startups that are coming?
Only 2 out of there's 10,000 reasons a startup could fail. Only 2 out of 10,000 are probably some competitive threat. The rest are self-inflicted wounds. You're not taking care of your clients. You have the wrong pricing, the wrong packaging. Your code is buggy and things of that sort. There's a lot under your control. You really do have to find equilibrium between R&D and go-to-markets. This generative stuff, I mean, we were using a lot of these things, but didn't know the words, right? We were doing cloud before cloud existed, using neural networks before people, knew these things existed. In some ways, I wouldn't oversell it, because I can tell you in the environments that we find ourselves in, you have compliance and legal officers that when Gen AI shows up in their environments, they shank them. They literally shank them. They don't want any part of them, because do you want hallucinations in a nuclear power plant, in a hospital, in an air base, and things of that sort? So the things that actually operate the world as we know it, they don't want any part of that. They want determinism in some ways. And some of you are like, well, let's figure out how to guardrail these things. I mean, they're developed with stolen content. Let's call a spade, right? The regulatory environment and the legal environment has to figure that out between the publishers and the AI industry. But trying to guardrail these things with no matter whatever fancy agents you want to use to try to do that is like trying to keep Donald Trump on a teleprompter.
All right.
He's going to get away with it for about 30 minutes or so while he delivers the speech in the Oval Office, but later that night he's on social media and letting you know what he really thinks about what he previously said, and it could be even contradictory.
Okay, Igor, let me push back on that a little bit, right? So, as a consumer, right? Even as a consumer, I see ChatGPT 4 is doing great, so I'm paying for that. And then I see Anthropic, it's got Claude 3, that's awesome, I'm getting that. And I've got Perplexity, and that's great, I'm getting that. But at some point, like, these models are like, I'm not gonna pay for all these models, right? But as a startup that I'm putting my future on one or two, how do I know? Because it seems like it's a race, right? ChatGPT is good, and then Claude 3 comes in, and then GPT-5 is going to come in, and then, you know what I mean? Like, it's moving way too fast.
Yeah, as a child of the 80s, I remember watching War Games, and what's the lessons learned there? What's the last scene? The only way to win is to not play. Okay? So there's two ways to make a hamburger. You can take a cow and turn it into a hamburger, or you can be inspired by a cow that could make a hamburger, but you go over there and you get some potatoes and some carrots and some turnips and turn it into a hamburger, right? So an LLM could just model the language. It doesn't have to actually produce the answer, and you're not going to be able to use any answers that an LLM emits in any sort of highly regulated industry and serious construct. So that's how you can still remain relevant. And look, there's two ways for startups to be born. Let's not think that there's only one way. Because when I started the last company, everybody was looking at this famous company in UK called Spinvox that had, I remember Guy Kawasaki being at TechCrunch. He's like, Igor, I use their product. It's fantastical. You have $1.5 million in funding. They have almost $300 million in funding from Goldman Sachs. They cratered. BBC did an investigation and found that they were a mechanical Turk. They were lying about doing speech recognition. When this company started, everybody was saying, whoa, why are we going to get this thing funded? Luckily, we count Steve Case and his team as some of our biggest earlier backers as well, and I appreciate him working with us. But everybody was looking at Element AI, right? The famed team up in Montreal, right? 150 million in funding. They were going to corner the market on enterprise AI. They got cratered. Then Reid Hoffman shows up with his inflection thing with $1 billion plus, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's going to take the wind out of your sails. There's two ways to make a company, ladies and gentlemen. You can grow it in the rainforest of the West Coast where there's plenty of resources, food and water to tend to the creation of these organisms, or you can grow in a desert. And economics is a study of the allocation of scarce resources. I've always bet on the desert creatures. The ones that are rise of the rest, that grow up in other markets, know how to be more resilient creatures and adapt to these market conditions. And I don't need billions of dollars of Jensen's parts in order to operate.
Okay, thanks, Igor. Okay.
Okay, hold on, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to laugh. Igor's amazing. He's amazing. Let's continue. Let's continue.
So since we only have a very few minutes left, very succinctly, Stefanos, what are you looking forward to see for AI in general, not just Gen AI, in the enterprise now and going into 2025?
Yeah, what I think is going to be amazing to see in 2025 is basically businesses and enterprises being enabled to build their own AI solutions, build their own models that on their own data that they can trust, they can control, they can explain, they can change. And, I think that there is, and at a competitive cost. I think there are going to be some amazing opportunities to do that. And looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I definitely think going back to the buy versus build thing. I think two things is that number one, yes, the funding and the compute aspect of this and everything is still going to be a big question mark. Second thing and everything, the talent to build these things is going to be another scarcity too as well. So I'm not sure it would, especially when it comes to the build part of things, and even in the buy side of things, you still need, a set of talent, to be able to integrate scale, and what it may be. And so I think where a lot of companies, small businesses are going to end up doing, I mean, this is I think it's like they're trying to convince a bunch of small businesses kind of to build their own cloud infrastructure. It just doesn't make sense, to do so. I think you definitely still have aspects of people taking their own data and then creating, agents and, creating AI solutions on top of that, RAG applications, but building their own models and stuff from scratch. Not from scratch, but even building our models and, even fine tune them. I'm not sure if I see that as a large use case for the majority and stuff. I think definitely a few company stuff will, but for the majority, it's for me, it's hard to see.
Great, thank you. Shashank, what's your...
Same discussion, build versus buy. For the next 12 months, build versus buy. Half or close to 70% of teams will build and then fail, and then they'll go and buy. And this is, tail as old as time. Cloud, everybody wanted their own cloud, and then eventually settled around 3 or 4 brands. So build
Hello, come on now.
versus buy is the biggest conversation right now in enterprise. And, your recommendation of, you'll go around and then learn your lessons will probably hold true. So that's one thing. But I personally believe for small businesses and even for enterprise agents that can be guardrailed, there's a lot of reporting solutions. I've not seen any promise because, like as I said, if it's 1% faulty, it's 100% faulty. But we'll see more progress in reporting.
Great, thank you.
And also too, we're still at a place right now on the generative AI side that AI is definitely, it helps us better with tasks, not projects. So it can definitely help us with tasks, and of course a bunch of tasks equal project and stuff for sure. But trying to apply, a whole AI solution to a whole, big, entire project and everything, we're just not quite there yet. I still believe that it should be task focused and everything. And then of course, if you do task focused, you can add up a bunch of tasks and everything to help you with an entire project. But even that, you still need to scale.
Thank you. Igor, what do you see coming up in the rest of this year and in 2025?
All right, here it is. I'll unpack it. There's regulation coming, isn't there? And so let me share something with you.
Thanks to EU first and then US.
A good country lawyer knows the law. A great country lawyer knows the judge. All right, so some of us are going to be doing what? Waiting for these things to show up. The EU AI Act, what's happening in California, the executive order, and some of us are going to be part of the negotiation.
I think I'll probably do a video on that too, the AI EU Act and everything, and then some of the proposed acts and everything that California has done, which is those things can be challenging and stuff before, because regulation does not mean the same thing across the board. For some people, regulation means I want nothing to do this, stop this. Okay, well, let's not ever build this. Some regulations means like, hey, I want to be involved every step of the way, which is problematic, especially from the government level. And so I'm probably do a video around that, which that may spark some conversations. But yeah.
Negotiations and the constructs, and then figuring out how these things mutate. Again, to have proper, responsible AI being birthed, ensuring, as Steve made in his previous comments, that we can democratize access to AI so that there's opportunities for companies of all sizes, small, medium, and large. And so that's the thing that over the course of the next 12 months, we should be paying attention to.
Right, and also what I've seen from enterprises is that they have been very ambitious in the last 18 months. They start out, we were having a conversation with a good friend of mine that's here with like 500 AI projects, and then they have to filter it down to a reasonable number that they can actually put the investments that it deserves in order for it to go from, proof of concept to the actual deployment. Thank you very much for your attention and your time. Really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's a great conversation. Number one, Igor is amazing, along with the rest of the panelists as well. So, I've had the privilege of talking about these things now for quite some time and building so many solutions. And so, guys, let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, and everything. I definitely will be doing more of these videos and everything. Like, these are fun. These are awesome. And it's also reassuring for me and my own ego and stuff as well. So, guys, until next time, we